and our knowledge partner, Mr. Joshua Ross, the Associate Partner, Performance Talent and Rewards of Aon Hewitt, who's going to be first making the theme presentation, giving you insights into the scenario as it is of now in the industry, in the sector. And then we are, the chair of the session is going to be taking over from there, making the opening remarks, and then we have our individual speakers making their presentations and giving more insights into it. So I would like to request Mr. Ross for his presentation. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the delegation, the Petrotech delegation, for selecting Aon as one of their knowledge partners here today. We're very glad to be here and very glad to showcase our expertise in the oil and gas energy industry. The delegation did a great job yesterday of really setting the industry context for our discussion today, the human capital implications of hydrocarbons for the future. I'll reference back to some of the discussions actually yesterday as important topics, context for the topic today. Over the last 2 years, unfortunately, almost 260,000 jobs globally were shed in the energy industry due to the downturn in commodity prices. And sometimes we really, it's easy to forget the humanity behind that, the struggles that have been caused by this. It has a lasting impact on those affected, both directly and tangentially. So I'm not talking about just the people who have lost their work or been laid off, but rather their children, adolescents developing their views of the world, their views of energy, their views of oil and gas, college students, professionals, tradespeople weighing their career options. This in combination with really the proliferation of technology and broadening view of energy distribution will have a profound impact on the value proposition that energy companies will need to put forth to attract the best and the brightest to come in this industry. And that's really critically important for innovation in the energy industry. As discussed yesterday by the chairman of the Indian Oil Company, approximately 1.2 billion people live outside the grasp of essentially an aspect of our daily life that we take for granted sometimes, accessible electricity. As more of us define our quality of life through the inclusiveness and community found through devices like this, right? As much as it pains any father here trying to get the attention of their teenage child at the dinner table, this yearning to really drive connectedness is and will continue to be more and more strongly felt by future generations across the globe. This will be the only world they know. And in terms of aspirations, future generations will drive the access to inclusiveness and community. They'll be able to exponentially increase productivity through more stable and affordable power in underserved countries, and they'll even be able to improve health by really targeting pollution in metropolitan areas with more sustainable energy. Now, we know that fossil fuels will continue to be an important, essential element in the global fuel mix. So when we say, come work in energy, come work in oil and gas, we as organizations need to take into consideration how we're going to impress upon them that we share the same aspirations for our world. Because the best and the brightest can choose to achieve their same aspirations through working for a technology company, developing products, platforms, or programs, and other innovations. So we really got to focus on accessible, stable, affordable, and sustainable energy that's really going to drive that connectedness with the rest of the world. Why should oil and gas and energy lose out on such a powerful aspect of this value proposition to the future generations that will want to innovate this industry? We need to build an inclusive value proposition that emboldens these employees to action. Winston Churchill once said that you never let a good crisis go to waste. At a time like this, with the abundance of global change around us, it's critical to have the right talent in place, especially the leadership in your organization. They have to have the vision to really navigate your organization to firmer ground. A lot of leaders today are focused on commodity prices and operational costs, important aspects of running a profitable and sustainable enterprise in this environment. Demographic changes and preferences may play a large role in formal or informal culture that have a profound impact on how you're going to be able to attract the right talent going forward. So we have to ask the question, how am I going to really increase the growth of this organization, and what's the talent that I really need? And do I have the right talent in place today? And how does the changes that we're seeing in our industry and our business, how does that impact not only my business strategy, but how's that going to impact my talent strategy? How do I execute on that? And one thing you'll hear from the guys today is organizations really are attacking this talent issue. Throughout that last couple years, oil and gas and organizations throughout the energy industry have had to make adjustments to become more nimble. They're really fighting the fact that they've got to conduct long-range business planning while operating in a much lower, volatile commodity environment. To do this, they've made three key changes to the way they operate. They've looked at how they make capital allocations, how they make capital investments in projects. They've looked at how they make people investments, really around optimizing spend, making sure that they're putting money into the right places to really make sure that every dollar spent really brings more value to that employee that's receiving it. And they've really tried to increase efficiency. Now, organizations today fall in different buckets in terms of how they had to maintain their people investments over the last 2 years and how they've changed. And some organizations have really felt the impact of this. Some have been hit really hard, and some have actually been treading water for the last 2 years or had to resort to bankruptcy or other situations to continue operating. The factors that really impacted this globally was organizations' access to capital and the strength of their balance sheet. Those who had stronger balance sheets and access to capital really didn't feel it quite as bad as those who didn't have access to sustain operations. Also, their asset portfolio, right? How diversified is their asset portfolio to where they're actually able to go out and find high rates of return to get the cash flow needed to run their operations? Some were very limited. And also the amount of proprietary technology their company owns. For those with limited proprietary technology and a very limited asset portfolio and not a strong balance sheet, a lot of those organizations may not make it through this current environment. But the people investments had a different focus based on where organizations were. Those who were just feeling the impact of the current commodity environment were able to focus on more optimization. Sure, they shed redundancies and limited hiring. They honed their annual incremental spend. They redistributed bonus pools, maybe consolidated some operations. But they really tried to optimize what they were doing from a people perspective and from a benefits and retirement perspective. The ones who were hit harder really had to make difficult cuts in their corporate allocations, people that work in their corporate centers in accounting and HR and finance and IT. They had to reduce their field operations to account for the fact they were doing less work. But really they had to focus on the preservation of their key talent. And while they also were able to optimize some of their spend, they spent much more time cutting programs for employees. And for the organizations who really were treading water, they had to resort to really severance of a significant amount of their population. The organizations that fall in this category would also be related to organizations that provide services and equipment to the energy industry whose revenue sources have really gone away. In HR organizations, they've really focused on efficiency as well, Most organizations have reorganized their internal, reorganized internally to serve their customers better. They've altered their talent acquisition processes to reduce cost. They've altered talent management processes to more accurately identify high performers. And they've increased investment in technology to increase efficiency. So with that, I'll talk a little bit about this next year. Organizations really don't, for the most part, have the cash flow to increase their current staffing levels in 2017, but they plan to maintain. So the good thing is that what we see is kind of maybe we're going to the other side of this current environment to where organizations feel like they can maintain. Some have begun to add headcount or plan to add headcount, but overall organizations seem to be in a good status. But the other question is about how are they going to react to a market recovery. Most organizations are not able to capitalize on a significant market recovery, even if it were to occur tomorrow, because they don't have the resources to do that. And so only 17% of organizations really responded that they'd be ready to move quickly when the market recovers. So with that, I'll leave you with this. Really, as an organization, craft your story. Develop a story that's going to empower the talent around you to achieve the results for your organization. Know your talent. Find ways to identify what you need and how to relate to that talent. Find ways to be more nimble. And then also take this opportunity to refine and remove programs that really aren't benefiting your organization any longer. And with that, I'll turn it over to Shrikant Gattu. Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are having two challenges. One is this post-lunch session, and second is this session on talent management in this great conference, which is more dominated by policy, directions, technical subjects. But end of the day, I have been given this role to be chairing this session. So we will have a good deliberation over the next 1 hour. One little perspective before I request the eminent speakers to share their perspective is this: human resources in the last 2 decades have started emerging more as a business function. Earlier, perhaps when I started my career, people used to talk about staff function, support function. I was very uncomfortable even at that point of time. But I think fortunately, last 2 decades, it is more developing as a strong business function. And why not? I think anything in business which is a support function or staff function should be outsourced, should not be inside. Today, when we are looking at gearing for growth for this hydrocarbon great industry sector in India, perhaps talent requirements, the talent strategy itself will become very critical. And I come to you with a very simple live example of my own company. Maruti Suzuki, which started in 1982 as a public sector company, became a joint venture company in 1992, 10 years later. So government and Suzuki became joint owners. And after another 10, 11 years, 2003, it became a private sector company. Huge change from a government company for 21 years, remaining a public sector company, and then becoming a private sector company. But the fact is that in that phase 1, 1982, then again phase 2, 1992, and then again phase 3, 2003 onwards, Maruti still remains number 1 by miles. So that spells about what kind of people strategy worked for Maruti. Perhaps 82 when we started as a public sector company, then we got into a big change 10 years later, then we got into a bigger change 10 years later. How exactly that people strategy to that kind of business results which are in front of us, 1.5 million car sales per annum, 48% market share. Perhaps this is one perspective. Second is we have now seen in human resources, one big challenge for HR leaders, CEOs, young generation coming up making larger part of the workforce, including private sector, public sector, even government offices. And you will be surprised, in one of such conferences of National HRD Network, and we were talking about a kind of a future competitive policy on compensation and benefits, and there was one young delegate who raised a question, and rather than a question, it was an observation, and he talked about in that conference that as people grow, their salaries should start reducing because their responsibilities are met, they are married, they have taken care of their children. Youngsters who are getting into the career, that salary increase should be given to youngsters because they will get married, they will have children. I was quite amazed at that perspective. And at work, perhaps when we are looking at this kind of a great sector, hydrocarbon, we look at great companies like ONGC, Indian Oil, perhaps you will be also getting into this big challenge over the next 15, 20 years. And somewhere on this, we will be having 3 different thought leaders coming from different industries. So perhaps we have, for your brief, quick introduction, we will be starting with Mr. S.P. Gattu from, he's Director HR BPCL. Then we'll have a perspective from Vedanta, so Group HR Head, Mr. Suresh Bose is fortunately with us, and then Shrikant from maybe Group HR Head Bharti Airtel, perhaps 3 different perspectives. So we will request all the 3 speakers about 10 minutes of thought sharing, and then we'll perhaps see how exactly the time is going. So thank you for your attention, and I am sure that you will be finding this discussion, deliberation very interesting.
I'll take this, etc. Good afternoon. Chairman, thanks for that presentation, introduction, and thanks to the organizers for keeping the lights on in this intensity post-lunch. So I've been allotted a very tight schedule of 10 minutes, and I'll try to speak from a practitioner's point of view, building on whatever Ross has just now talked of, in terms of what are the trends that we are watching in the recent times. And I must also thank Petrotech for giving us this wonderful opportunity to come and talk about talent in a platform where, as already stated, most of the issues are more in the nature of policies and directions that the country has to take. So it fits in very well as one of the youngest talent pool in the world. I think we rightly belong here. Just to sort of quickly touch upon what exactly are the kind of trends which are emerging, and this is from the World Economic Forum, where the trend was seen future of work, future of jobs as far as energy sector is concerned. What are the 2 top trends which are impacting the business models? And what came out was 71% people felt that new energy supplies and technologies is one of the biggest impact it will have. Second is climate change, natural resources naturally was quite logically there. Changing nature of work, flexible workforce, because we just talked about what is the kind of workforce which is entering. And very next of that is geopolitical volatility, and if we are watching the crude prices, we can understand what we are talking about. What are the kind of strategies that HR needs to really work upon, or what are they, how are they really coping with this? And top 2 trends in that are investing in the and reskilling of the current employees, and also supporting the mobility and job rotation. This is something very interesting. We also try to see what are the kind of trends which are there on HR perspective. We talked of the energy sector from business perspective, and what came out as the largest HR trend is organizational design. This used to be a function which used to be somewhat lower in the priority of HR people in the past, but the kind of workforce which is entering, it's like a Hollywood movie making, coming together, working for a purpose and mission, accomplishing it, and thereafter going for their respective areas of work. And this is making everyone think differently. The second highest priority is coming in the area of leadership. Obviously, this always remains a priority area, and culture and engagement are third and the fourth. Talking of today's workforce, or people who are entering, millennials, that's how we popularly call them, it is something like, very often people say, look, it's only about me. It's not really that. There's a very good publication of HBR which talks about, it's not about, first of all, the relationship about me is don't let me down, trust me, I also trust you, and then make my life better, enrich my life, and let us behave fairly as in terms of our responsibility. Let us connect with the community, and most important, let as we, let us make a contribution which is bigger than who I am as a person. I should be able to make a contribution to the community and the society at large in a much bigger way. Again, millennials, the learning processes are different. The way they learn, the way they absorb things, a lot of distractions, overwhelmed by overdose of technology, attention spans are very small. How organizations need to cope with it, we'll have to really work out. In fact, we have a technology company presence over also here that this mobility is becoming a big thing, and mobile is becoming a device which is also for learning and development. So we will have to deal differently with the generation which is coming in. Now let me speak purely as a practitioner, because this is where I think I can speak out of my experiences. It's not good enough for me to understand the trends and also know what's happening in the world. I need to translate all this into the way the organization, in my case Bharat Petroleum, responds to that. We typically in any well-run professional company have very strong HR processes in the direction of performance management, talent management, learning and development, also in the areas of progressions, placements of people. But what is different that BPCL has done is to integrate all these into what we call as integrated career development framework, where all the HR processes are feeding into one another and building on each one another and trying to make something which is possible by collective impact, which perhaps may not be possible individually. None of these decisions are standalone. All of them are connected, and whether it is an organizational requirement or individual focus, everything works together. And I can share this with my experience that this is something which is really having a phenomenal impact. The talent management process or the potential development process is typically based on 12 leadership competencies. 6 of them are business competencies and 6 of them are in the area of people competencies. What is again unique is that each individual's aspiration, because I talked a little while ago that each one wants to be focused on himself or herself, each individual's aspiration is taken upon. We also try to build in terms of what are the kind of inputs that the person is getting from his ecosystem in terms of his peers, subordinates, managers, and on all these competencies. And one unique thing is what is one suggestion that ecosystem each one wants to give to this person to be even a better leader. What is the climate this person is creating? What are the leadership styles that this person follows? What are his motives and values? And the most important thing, the table in the middle and the discussion, we have a talent review panel which puts all these things together and comes out as to understand what is the unique God's own gift this person has got. And then try to build on that and try to see how exactly this person can make a unique contribution in the organization which he or she alone can make and no one else can make. And then it leads to assignments which could be really given or areas where he can work well. And the next step is having career dialogues with this person and trying to work on the unique development plan of this person. And what is very interesting is that whereas each one may, like for example, one person may have the same area of competency, say for example focus on customer, but if one person learns by doing, he gets a project to work on. Another person learns by listening or watching, he gets movies to watch, or for that matter, what are the Harvard management inputs that he can work on, and then allowing it to work. Another unique thing which we are able to do is have a one-page talent sheet. This is what is the talent review panel sees. There's a single view of the person, and every parameter which is concerned with that person is available for this talent panel to see. The top 3 levels, the full board spent 16 full days last year, including Sundays and holidays, to see that each person is the top 3 level talent is seen, and even the top talent at the lower levels, then below that is also seen. This is typically a mixture of individual plan as well as what really the organization wants to do as a mandatory requirement. It has many elements. It has learning management framework on all the competencies I talked of. It also has the functional learning framework, and as the person progresses from the roles of managing self to managing others, managing managers and managing businesses, there are unique programs that these people have to attend, and the faculty is sourced from across the entire length and breadth of the world, from the top B schools, from the top technical schools, who really give them inputs. And these are long-drawn processes. All the inaugural programs in this one, the full board comes and addresses the people, and again at the end of the program, again the board goes and listens to how these people are really working on that. Apart from that, of course, we have a very unique and very important e-learning platform, which each person can choose and really decide for himself or herself. I also talked about engagement. We have a year-long engagement. We have various programs which are going from mentoring to having, volunteering for various activities, meet the leader, some experiential training, and also annual events to give it some sort of a platform for everyone to really carry it forward. Finally, what I want to really talk to you is how do we really create a culture in the organization which gives us feeling of a startup, because enterprises are now struggling to invite the top talent and let them work with, because there are many youngsters who do not want to work for large companies. And the reason is they want flexibility, they want areas where their ideas are appreciated. Last 16 years, we have a very strong innovation platform called Ideas, and there are very many variants which are working under that. And here, all the people get an opportunity to really position their thoughts and really vie for the awards. There are more than 2,500 ideas which were there, which all of them vie for the chairman's trophy. And this doesn't work only in terms of ideas. What is the direction organization has to take? Every 3 to 5 years, we get the entire organization engaged, and together, and I've just talked of some of the projects over there, together we decide what is the kind of organization, what is the vision that we have for the company, and how we are going to achieve it. And in the end, every leadership team has the responsibility of passing on the baton in a way there the values continue, but the organization keeps growing to the newer spaces. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gattu. I think I'll request Mr. Suresh Bose to kindly address the audience.
So very good afternoon. The challenge is just not after lunch, but the challenge is 24/7 for HR professionals to keep you awake. I represent Vedanta Limited. We are into metals and mines, $15 billion company, mini BHP, having Kane Energy, the oil company, also with us. And in terms of oil, I just wanted to say one intro for Kane, that we represent about 30% of the oil sector in our country. We're currently about 200,000 barrel per day, hinging to about 250 to 300. So that's a very brief about this company. I'm going to be talking about recruiting, reskilling, retraining, rewarding talent in the hydrocarbon sector. So to start with, I'm just saying that easy oil is declining. The days are moving from easy oil to tight oil, and there is an oil recovery for maximum yield is about 10 to 30%. Companies don't want to explore. That's in the first cubicle I'm showing. And the second one, which says is still in this tight sector, people and organization remain critical challenge for this industry. There is a projection of shortage in the global market for the talents. Grow versus buy model, and we are going to see the time reduced for the autonomy for person to hold the principal position. Inter and intra-company collaboration for long-time solution is the need of the hour. Now, if you see in the global energy demand, there is still a demand for coal, oil, gas, and but in the long run, it is going to be more of gas, and this is because of the CO2. But but then you see a good trend till 2035. There's going to be a demand till 220. But going forward, let's see how the energy is going to be used more. And the lesson learned is refocusing on the portfolios. You know, one-time investment is something people see is the best investment. Volume to value and exploration to appraisal, new venture, existing venture. So there's so many things that people don't want to really go for more of an exploration at this point of a time, but then consolidate their business and see, you know, can I generate more value out of it? So we are inching to, because we are not slowing down. It's also a good time for exploration, but then, you know, in a short time, can I get better things at a faster rate is what I'm looking at. Now, on the talent outlook 2025, if you see, you know, India, Asia is pretty comfortable. There is a demand in the Middle East. There is also a demand in Australia, in Europe, in other parts of the world. But India is pretty comfortable with a lot of young talents available, X, Y, and the millennials doing a great job. The need of the hour is diversity. Diversity is something which we need to see, just not in the millennials, but we need to see that in the managerial and the senior management portfolios. So that's the need for in Indian outlook. Now, if you see, our philosophy is, you know, to acquire talent early on and nurture them and accelerate their growth. So we've been doing, you know, attracting leaders, you know, hiring from the right colleges, you know, with the right qualification, also with good marks is what we attract talents from the campuses. We develop leaders very early. We put them into this into the water pretty early and ensure that they start swimming at an early stage with a lot of training that goes in the initial days. We are a performance-driven culture, so our motto is just to see an early star and give them, reward them with the right thing to retain him and also to take up multi-accelerated growth portfolios. So the strongest point is today, you know, if you see in the HR domain, there are two things that we need to concentrate. One is to engage with our talents, and the second is to develop the talent within. So that's something which I want to say within is very important for us to see a better growth. Now, there is a talent loss due to retirement, and we need to invest in the young talents. And if you see, we do have a program called LEAP, a Learn, Experience, Completion Progress, which is a one-year program which has the entire capsule of the learning in terms of technology, digitization, and you name it in your technical aspect, because this is one thing that reduces your, brings your safety, your processes improved, and also you get a very efficient thing. So this is what we do to get the young talents to take up higher roles. Now, I was talking about optimizing time to autonomy is the key to success, because this is something very important for all of us to see, that how do we get stars to take up the key portfolios. We at Vedanta engage with people very early and see the 3 Ps, the people, performance and potential in the 9-box matrix. And that's where we also give opportunity to people who are, you know, about 60-70% ready to take up this new role and give them the developmental aspect. And I want to be saying one small thing out here is that the senior management, including the chairman of the company, is investing at least 5 hours for one session and at least 2 sessions in a month that happens to identify this talent. So that's what is the commitment in this level. So we do plan the careers very well. Mobility is one of the things that we see. If person moves, there is a good chance of growth. There is, of course, a lot of investment on skill-based learning. We send them to a benchmark company. It could be any part of the world. Learn the initiative, come and implement that. And the structured job rotation is just not in his portfolio. He can do a cross-functional job rotation. And every person, every individual gets an anchor who is in touch from day one of his journey for taking up the new role. Now, we have 2 lines of growth, and we see that one is the professional track and then another one is the managerial track. And this is where we are saying, you know, architect is for holding the principal level at the level of 3C, that's the general manager level that in our company and others that we say. One is to grow technically strong in your profile and move up where you want to be an expert person. We do a technical act up, which is called the technical accelerated competency tracking upward movement, where this person gets growth. And there is a person, if you think that you are good in moving to a general manager role, why not give that portfolio also? So there is, what is there for me is, it's good for equitable career, provides opportunity, and also for people, for the business, this is one of those big chunk for growth. Now, the thing for job rotation is I did speak to you about that, which is one thing helps in today's scenario for a growth in terms of holding a better thing for retaining talent. So we keep churning people from one kind of a portfolio to another portfolio, so that he acquires multi skills. Okay, and towards the last is that what I'm saying is we connect, involve, develop, and care. And our biggest thing is on the employee engagement. We connect with people on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis, on a day-to-day basis, and very early is what talent finds his place in the boardroom is what we keep doing, and he or she gets an opportunity to also work on various projects and assignment for the growth. So there are various ways our employees are trained and groomed to take up the next level of growth. This is something which we do at every stage for employees who is a performer, and it's just not monetary, it's also non-monetary types of. We have various thing for people, even on an external thing, we see a joining bonus, we see a retention bonus. For people within, we have various incentives, including the CO Kitty, which is a quarterly driven one. We also have people to get the bonuses based on the milestones, on the KPIs. So there are various things besides what he gets in a C4 salary. So that's the one on reward and recognitions. Talent ahead is what we are looking, we're saying develop them early, give them the early portfolios, and also we are very clear that the diversity is going to be a major thing for us. So we are looking for employees who are looking at a holistic thing rather than one small portfolio, and that's where Vedanta lies and Kane lies. So with this, I want to thank you all for listening to this Vedanta story. Thank you.
Thank you, Suresh. And I think I'll request Srikanth to now please share his thoughts.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So, what's a mobile company HR head doing here in the Petrotech conference? That's the question. And the answer is yes, we can find parallels in diverse sectors which can help us to reinvent ourselves. And that's the answer. And if you were to take my own career, after 30 years of finance, and I did 7 years as Group CFO of Bharti Airtel, I reinvented myself last year by becoming the global CHRO, the head of HR of this company. So, it's still possible to reinvent even at a personal level at a later stage in life, and that's what I'm currently going through here. Having said that, I think there are several parallels between the mobile industry and the oil and gas industry. The oil and gas industry, of course, is much older, but the mobile industry is just 21 years old in India. But there are some commonalities. Both are very heavy on capital investment. In the mobile case, more than $100 billion, that's more than 650,000 crore rupees, have been invested by the mobile players in this country, including on spectrum, networks, and so on and so forth. And the oil and gas, of course, is again a huge guzzler of capital. That's one parallel. The second parallel is on pricing pressures. You all started paying 16 rupees per minute, and today, you are even at 10 paise a minute, you are saying it's quite expensive in terms of a mobile connectivity, or at 25 rupees a GB is quite expensive. You would rather have it free of cost, and so on and so forth. So that's the kind of challenge that the mobile industry faces. And the oil and gas industry of late is facing the similar pricing pressure. So how do you really reinvent your organization? How do you manage your talent amidst the pricing pressures is again another big parallel. The third one is one of commoditization. Now again, of course, oil and gas, there is a big risk of commoditization. You also do a hell of a lot of value chain upgradation and so on. So is the same case with mobile. Either we can be a dumb pipe, which is just a utility providing connectivity, or we can be a smart application. It's a question of how we really approach the whole thing and look at the opportunity versus the risk of becoming a commodity. So those are some parallels, but there are some very stark differences in the way both the sectors are operating. For example, this sector is 21 years old, and every year as it becomes 20, it becomes 21, and 21 becomes 22. Since 1995, this industry has been there, the mobile sector. The average age of employees in this organization is actually going down. As the age of the sector goes up, the average age of employees in this sector is going down. And that phenomenon requires some explanation. It's because the kind of reinvention that is expected of this sector requires that sort of young talent. Whether you like it or not, whether you believe it or not, it is true that younger the talent, more disruptive they are. And if you want to really produce disruptive mobile apps and disruptive kind of applications that excite the customer, you better get some young talent. Maybe there is a lesson for the oil and gas sector as well, in terms of, maybe some disruptive things can be done if you can inject some really fresh talent there. But there is a catch in this. The young talent, they want to work in flatter organization structures. They want to be much more agile in their thinking and behavior. And therefore, if we really want to motivate them and keep them in your organization, we have got to reorient through flatter organization structures and really look to question some of the traditional organization structures that we may have grown up with. That's one. The second thing that the mobile industry is doing, now I am speaking on behalf of the entire mobile sector, not just Bharti Airtel, is you need to reinvent yourself by finding parallels outside your company. But there are only 3 or 4 oil and gas companies, there are only 3 or 4 mobile companies. How do you really find parallels to reinvent yourself? And that's where I think the mobile companies have found a smart way of doing it. On the postpaid customer segment, they find a parallel with the utilities like the electricity or the gas providers, and they sort of benchmark with those utility companies. On the prepaid sector, they benchmark with the fast moving consumer goods because it's sold in the streets, it's sold in the retail shops, and therefore they find a big parallel there. On the B2B side of telecom, they find a parallel with the consulting companies like IBM and Accenture and so on and so forth. And on the home broadband and DTH business, they find parallels with the white goods. And of late, all of us are doing mobile wallets. There's no option for us but to find parallels in the banking and financial sector. So you constantly reinvent yourself by benchmarking with other companies outside, and at the surface they may not be a right benchmark for you, but if you dig deeper, you'll find some real parallels, and the insights from those benchmarking really helps you to reinvent yourself. The third big phenomenon as we gear up for growth in telecom sector is about handling the aspirations of employees. As I said, the young employees, they want to take charge of their careers, and they do not want too much of paternalistic approaches saying, I'm going to take care of your career. No, they just want to take care of their careers themselves. They make their choices, they make even difficult choices. But the only thing they expect is visibility, transparency, and clarity on opportunities. They're not seeking certainty, but they want visibility, transparency, and clarity of opportunities. If we can provide that to the youngsters, I think you've got a hook to really keep the youngsters in your organization, despite the fact that they really want to take charge of their careers. There's a parallel on the telecom and oil and gas, and I'll take just 2 more minutes, Mr. Siddiqui.
Yeah, sure, sure.
Like oil and gas, telecom also operates in difficult terrains, in the hills, in Jammu and Kashmir, in Bihar, in Northeast, and in the forests, in Dantewada, and so on and so forth. Keeping the towers energized with power, electricity, diesel, all the 24 hours. There are more than 400,000 towers, mobile towers in this country, and these need to be energized all the time. The equipment there which is hanging, all the radio equipment which requires operations and maintenance all the time. The antenna and the wireless there need to be fine-tuned depending on the weather conditions and depending on the wind conditions. You need to keep on adjusting that to provide seamless connectivity. These are, and fiber, for example, laying the fiber across the country. Fiber gets cut and you got to relayer the fiber again and join the cuts and so on. All these are difficult jobs. Like oil and gas operates in very difficult terrain, telecom also operates in very difficult terrain. How do we really motivate employees to take up jobs in these difficult terrains? And I think the only answer that we can find is that give them a sense of fulfillment, give them a sense of being important for the organization, and make them feel visible and critical for the company. That's the only way, and this is a journey that we have to be at it, and so people will find their likes and dislikes, but as a company, we have got to really keep them keep them feel important and significant. And the final point I want to make is both oil and gas and telecom are gearing for growth. We are unique in our own ways. They are very, very different kind of sectors, but there is one big commonality between oil and gas and telecom, and that is the kind of purpose that we can help our employees connect with and really find in their jobs a very meaningful profession and not just a job. The oil and gas, the employee in the oil and gas connects to a larger purpose of energizing India. The employee in telecom connects to a larger purpose of connecting India and creating a digital India. Now, if we can help our employees to really connect with these larger purpose, I think we'll be able to motivate the employees to higher goals, higher achievements, better alignment with corporate goals, and still find opportunities for them to grow within the sector. And that's the only way we can gear up for growth, by encouraging our talent to be motivated within our sectors. Thank you very much.
You can have that presentation, please. Thank you, Srikanth. It was very interesting perspective between telecom and oil and gas sector. So we are now coming to that concluding session, and I think as I started initially, one simple perspective which I can share with you going forward, whether it is for oil sector, telecom, automobiles, talent perspective, talent strategy is going to be very, very specific business proposition. When we look at human resources as a business function, I think the first right route we are going to take for future right now. At one point of time, perhaps when I was looking at these three different presentations after Joshua made that initial theme introduction, there was this focus on Gen Y, and there was this focus on looking at business performance, business growth, future perspective. And perhaps in that context, speed will be very critical going forward. That will be linked to the talent strategy, what kind of people you have. Responsiveness of a company will be very critical. How fast we respond to the changing global business environment, how fast we respond to customers, how fast we respond to employees, that will become very critical. Somewhere in that, again, there is a business perspective, competitive edge, shifting from tangibles to intangibles. Earlier, a refined, state-of-the-art modern technology was defining the competitive edge. Product features were defining competitive edge. In our case, automobiles, when we started power windows many years back, that became a differentiator. But later on, it was all being copied by competitors. So perhaps no longer those tangibles are defining the competitive edge. I think to a great extent, business is shifting towards success coming from intangibles. And that's where this sense of business being pushed into the talent strategy becomes very critical, because businesses, after all, end of the day, dispassionately going to look at only business results. And this learning comes from one very small short story, because last 45 minutes there have been these three presentations. Somewhere in England, an English teacher was teaching the young kids, 6-7-year-olds, and since they had a 1 full month of exams, so she said, now today and maybe 1 or 2 days we'll only have puzzles, and those people who are going to give right answers, they will win 25 pounds sterling per puzzle. So the first puzzle she asked, who has been the greatest living saint on earth? Who has been the greatest living saint on earth? And one Scottish girl raised her hand and she named some saint from Scotland, but this English teacher said, no, that's the wrong answer. Similarly, another French boy tried, but wrong. Another Irish girl tried, but wrong. But one of our Jignesh from Gujarat, he raised the hand, and he was very, very sharp. He thought, I am in England, this class is in a school in England, teacher is English, so he said, the greatest living saint on earth is Jesus Christ. And this teacher was extremely happy, very proud of Jignesh, and she gave her 25 pounds sterling. After he got the money, put it in his pocket, then this teacher asked, Jignesh, how did you find the right answer after all these people made a wrong answer? Jignesh said, heart to heart, I knew it was Lord Krishna, but business is, after all, business. Somewhere, getting into this big question of defining the talent requirements for future, I think big question for us to look at slightly different way the way we have been looking at human resources so far. When I look at our country more specifically, and I am talking of oil and gas sector in the context of India, talent supply lines are still work in progress in my thinking. We are producing numbers, but we are not producing the right talent. I think Maruti, we require 500 young people all the time, technical people, but they are not really prepared. They need preparation for 1 or 2 years, 1.5 years, something like that. Second is, we talked about this big shift in Gen Y. I am reminding you that it is both in terms of white collar, we all heard, but I am also bringing this issue of blue collar. Young people, part of the unionized category, very high aspirations, very high risk taking. We are also looking at services sector, telecom, FMCG, consulting. They may take a bigger share of talent, but perhaps hydrocarbon sector may find it, manufacturing may find it a bit difficult to attract talent. So something has to be done there. And therefore, the next question, which I think which we have never paid much attention consciously, is employer branding and recruitment marketing will become a reality, a very critical reality for any top leadership strategy. Competitive landscape for talent acquisition will remain very tough, so there will be a kind of war for talent and issues, people making changes from one organization to another. Also, perhaps a quick glimpse, the government of India has set an ambitious target of increasing the contribution of manufacturing output from 16 to 25 by 2025 part of GDP. And there is tremendous potential, perhaps, when we look at 90 million additional jobs by 2025. So that's a huge opportunity also for a country, as my eminent speakers already talked about, India being a very very, very young country. Compared to that, since I work with Suzuki Japan to a great extent, Japan is an aging country, big problem of manpower, how to get people, young people, for working. In my thinking, three critical factors going forward, whether it is the oil and gas sector, whether it is automobiles, Maruti or telecom, I think top leadership, how we define, will be critical. What work environment we offer, in many of our examples we heard by our speakers, and what kind of people processes. This will be a critical challenge for all human resource heads and also CEOs. First, I'll talk about this leadership perspective very quickly, and I'm talking of this vision quotient. All our leaders, as I have seen in my 37 years, are very strong on business quotient, but they are bit weak, found wanting on vision and emotional quotient. And on the vision quotient, I will explain to you what I am trying to say, is that in terms of Maruti, last 33 years, we have been doing initiatives on the people strategy, on the business strategy, much before people can understand in the competitive space. So when we talked of true value, buying old cars and selling old cars 2001, other auto companies talked about that Maruti will now be doing this agentship for old cars. 5, 7 years down the line, 8 years down the line, they followed Maruti on that business strategy, just blankly copying what we did. I am saying we must forecast and vision the future into the present before it becomes obvious for others. And somewhere, this visioning quotient, why I am saying is less. One of our first Japanese managing directors in Maruti, Mr. Shinzo Nakanishi, 2008, he took over from Mr. Jagdish Khattar, who was an IAS. And Mr. Nakanishi was requesting me that, Mr. Siddiqui, let us go to our new plant at Manesar. It's a very, very rough rural area, so we'll have to put a lot of trees. Let's have a plantation drive. So once we went there, and we had this big tree plantation, 20,000 trees being put on that one single day. So we reached early, both of us, and we were having a cup of tea when I asked my civil people, what kind of trees we are going to put today? So they said we are going to put ficus, and they said some other horticulture names. They also said mango trees. And out of curiosity, I asked them how many years this tree will take to come to the fruit level when mangoes will be coming on these trees. He said 7 years. Nakanishi was being 63, Suzuki retirement being 65. I told Nakanishi-san, sorry, what you are going to do today, putting all these trees will be waste of time for you because you will not be there to enjoy the mangoes. I will be there to enjoy those mangoes. And to my horror and embarrassment, when Nakanishi replied to me, I joked, but he replied very serious. He says, Siddiqui-san, one role of the top management people like you and me is to create a very healthy company for the next team of top management of Maruti to take over. At that point of time, that vision quotient deficiency in me made me so small, so embarrassed, because I always thought of company around me, with me, not beyond me. Employees with me, not beyond me. Policies and directions within my own range, but not after me. Somewhere, I think when we are looking at, for Indian Oil and ONGC, two great companies, perhaps some little vision in terms of looking at this talent landscape for future, looking at this business strategy for future, to a great extent is going to be very relevant. We are looking at perhaps emotional quotient, more critical in my thinking, and where we are talking of nothing else but something what Srikanth was talking, earlier Suresh talked about, Mr. Gattu talked about. I am talking to you one thing, whether our leadership will be able to have a capability which is called listening capability. I think most of our leaders I have encountered, they have a great capability to talk most of the time. They only want to talk in a meeting, in fact. If there is a managing committee meeting, then the main guy would like to talk maybe 1 hour, 50 minutes, 10 minutes is left for the balance 20 members to contribute. Whereas perhaps a great leadership trait moving forward in the future strategy, young generation, will be the capability to listen. Even God has given us 2 ears so that we should listen more, and 1 mouth we should speak less. But that's where the challenge is. Very simple. Second part, appreciation. We like to criticize a guy the moment he comes into facing us. Whatever assignment, whatever kind of task, but appreciating somebody is, we are very big misers in the leadership roles. Somewhere, this one trait is going to be very, very critical when we look at, maybe bigger than all this is that ethical perspective Srikanth talked about, transparency, objectivity, fairness, principle of fairness. And I think a leadership which is fair is going to be very good, but even more critical, which is seen fair by the larger population. That leadership perspective to a greater, maybe from command and control to maybe builder and groomer of people, inspirational kind of leadership. In Maruti, we start work at 9 o'clock, and in the last 13 years that I have been in Maruti, at head of human resources, then chief operating officer, now chief mentor, we reach 15 minutes earlier as any normal employee, right from me to the, down the line people, youngsters to the top, the managing director. 9 o'clock means 15 minutes earlier, 8:45. That's the kind of culture, walk the talk. In our case, luckily, we have the same kind of Japanese practices which we have brought into the country last maybe 30 years. So we have the same uniform, same food, same canteen, open hall seating system. And somewhere Mr. Bhargav, who's our chairman, who's also been a great IAS guy for the government, took over my first CMD of Maruti in maybe 1986 at that point of time. And he talks to me that when they wanted to get into this Japanese systems and break these cabins and everything in that public sector environment, the biggest challenge came from the senior leadership, that how they are going to sit in a small 4x4 table in an open hall. So somewhere these challenges in my thinking in future will come. Perhaps when we look at the work culture perspective, I am looking at this respect for individual, that's all. Every individual in the company, perhaps if he or she feels that respect, I think whether it is difficult terrain sectors like oil and gas, you will get people. To a great extent, rest everything else, Srikanth and Suresh and these people have already talked about. Maybe patience for failure, risk-taking, experimentation, that culture. When we are looking at people processes, one small quick thing is female talent as a country we must exploit. Otherwise, you will be operating only with 50% talent to choose from. And perhaps when we have looked at Maruti in the last 13 years, girls have done exceedingly well in design, in production, in sales, not only IT, finance and HR, they have done exceedingly well in R&D. So I think there is no doubt in that perhaps we are still somewhere missing this great opportunity while we are looking at hiring talent, planning for talent, and perhaps we are looking at this great opportunity, female talent ratio. Maybe comp and benefit, we are looking at more differential pay and rewards for youngsters. We are also looking at psychic income for people who have spent time, experience, stretch roles. And somewhere perhaps we are also looking at new kind of career growth perspectives, where there is a fast track, there is a normal track, and there is an extended track. Maybe HR technology you cannot escape. That's a great strength, great power we can get into. In Maruti, we have a forecasting model in human resources. So I can share with you what will be the kind of trend of manpower 2025. We are very clear about what kind of ratios, how many young people, how many middle age, how many senior people. You will be surprised that we have forecasted 2003-04 manpower cost to be 3% of sales turnover in Maruti. Last 13 years, we are hovering around 2.53% of the sales turnover of the company, consistent. So somewhere the power of technology and to a great extent maybe looking at kind of changes, speed, what we can bring, analytics which we can bring. One question which I was wondering whether to share with you, not to share with you, but I was very impressed a couple of years back at Dubai. Maruti Supplier Conference was addressed by Professor Ramcharan, great guy, and tremendous kind of, kind of value add he can bring into your business model, can see some very hidden perspectives and talk to you about the potential. He talked about this principle of 98/2. By any chance, any one of you will be familiar with this concept? Normally, people are not. This principle of 98/2. Anyway, I'll just talk to you. 2% of the people, according to Professor Ramcharan, influence the behavior and performance of the balanced 98% population of any company. Only 2% of the people of any company influence and drive the performance of the balanced 98% of the company. Maruti, we are trying last 2 years whether we can change this principle to 95/5 for Maruti. That's where the potential I am talking about. But at the same time, in India and compared to Japan, we are very emotional, That's what I have seen, whereas Japanese colleagues of ours are totally not getting into any emotion in this thing. They are working here for 1 year, 2 years without the family and without this thing. I have not seen any such deficiency of emotions in our Japanese colleagues. Whereas when I look at our Indian colleagues, which are versus 100 Japanese, we are about 13,000 Indians. Indians are very emotional. Somewhere when we are looking at this talent perspective, I think we have to drop those emotions on the side and decide directions and maybe landscape strategy somewhere there. And I talked to you about one very simple example, how different we are compared to our Japanese colleagues. In Japan, a very senior lawyer, one evening was going in his big limousine, very rich guy, for a drive for a change. He said, too much work, so let me have a little relaxed perspective. He was driving. To his surprise, he saw on the side, on the lawns, 2 Japanese eating grass. So he got very surprised what these guys are doing eating grass. So he stopped his big car and went to them in his suit, and then he asked them, what are you doing? So they said, last 15 days, no money. Last 10 days, no food, so we are satisfying our tummy by eating grass. So this rich Japanese lawyer, he says, okay, then come in my car this evening, I will feed you. So obviously in the car, those 2 Japanese said, sir, you are like God. So this lawyer said, don't get into those kinds of formalities. No, sir, you are not like God, you are actually God for us because you will be feeding us. He says, no, let us not get into those formalities. The grass at my farmhouse is 2 meters tall. Perhaps while we end this, and we are very much within time, when we look at this perspective of business function, we look at this power of people going to drive business excellence, I think we need to have a definite strategy, medium to long term. It is not today HR is this, today HR is that, today is kind of recession, so I downsize people, tomorrow again I recruit people. I think somewhere we have made mistakes in India, as I have seen in corporates, including multinationals. Somewhere a medium to long term, very consistent strategy, and I think our public sector companies have been most successful. So I think that happens. When that happens, perhaps you will be doing well. When you will be doing well, you will be needing cars. Please, at that point of time, buy only Maruti cars. Thanks a lot. Ma'am, is that okay? Sure. So we have time, 5 minutes. If you want to have any questions, any of our panelists, you're most welcome.
Just pass the mic this side. Yeah.
See one hand being raised there.
Ma'am, just identify yourself and also whom you are addressing the question to.
Thank you for the panel. I'm Seema from Aon Hewitt. I have a question, and maybe more specifically to Mr. Gathu. Sir, in a lot of public sector enterprises, we typically have a lot of aging workforce. People who are nearing retirement versus obviously the millennials that are joining in now. So, what are the kind of initiatives that you take to bridge the gap?
Okay. Partly I answered that in the presentation because I largely talked about the people who are coming in. But this transition is something which was seen through pretty early, and that's the reason we have really worked on each of these areas as to what is the kind of skill that is there. In fact, let me put it in one line. The entire talent focus on which I spoke at such length is entirely with the perspective that you have spoken. And that's the reason we are talking at leadership level and every level that is down the line, where exactly we are not looking at it from a leadership at a level. Leadership is a pipeline, and at every level people need to provide that leadership. And with that in mind, we are working on 2 concepts. One is the functional skills, and another is, of course, the area of managerial and leadership skills. And both the areas are individually and collectively worked on. And just to take the point a little further in half a minute, there is a strong technology backbone to see that we are able to customize this to each management staff. We are doing leadership processes for 3,000 people. I don't know too many people who will be doing at such a large number.
So my name is Sachin Dikshit. My question to Mr. Siddiq is, how much value should an organization give to emotional intelligence?
I think I talked about the three big aspects of leadership, the vision quotient, the business quotient and emotional quotient. I think going forward, perhaps a good balance of the three will be required, but perhaps the kind of deficiency we are looking at currently, emotional quotient will have to go much higher. And somewhere, perhaps this people connect, when we look at, and I think Srikanth was talking about this with respect to the young people, but I think even in Maruti, we have got three generations working with us right now, very young people, millennials, people who have got roughly about age group of 40s and people who have got 50 plus. And believe me, all three are high in terms of emotional quotient, which they need from the leadership. So somewhere going forward, I think this balance will be very much required part of the leadership role, but I think a higher quotient of vision and emotional quotient will be required.
So thank you. I think, so with this, we'll close the session.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you to,
I had a question to Dr.
if
Mr.
you can
Siddiqui.
take the question off stage, please. Thank you so much. We need to close the session. We already have the speakers for the other and 10 minutes of break. So thank you to all our speakers. May we request you to please step forward for a group photograph. And we are sure what you've shared with all of us here, you actually come in that 2% influencing the 98% here. So people who want to move out, we are having a short 10 minutes break. Okay, it's been reduced to 5 minutes. 5 minutes, just a stretching break, a bio break, and then we are back with the next session. That's Making India Manufacturing Hub for the Hydrocarbons. The session is going to be chaired by Mr. Ramesh Abhishek, the Secretary DIPP. We are also going to be